Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Incorruptible Mass. Our mission here is to help you transform state politics. We know that together we can make Massachusetts policy reflect the needs of the vast majority of the residents of our beautiful state. And today we are going to be talking about the budget, right? That's big stuff. It's like going to affect all of our lives. So we will tell you what's in it, what's not in it, what should be in it, what we're irritated about in terms of the way that they pass it and all of these things. We'll give you a lot of information that you won't get anywhere else. Before we do that, I would love to introduce my lovely co-hosts, and I will begin with Jonathan Cohn.
Jonathan Cohn, he, him, his, joining from Boston and being active with electoral and issue organizing in Massachusetts for coming close to a decade.
And Jordan.
Jordan Burke Powers, he, him, his, and I have I've been doing this so long I've become a curmudgeon. Electoral politics.
I am Anna Callahan, she, her, coming at you from Medford. I am the resident bubbly optimist. And I will tell everyone, though, that I tweaked my lower back this morning and I'm in some pain. And so but being bubbly is definitely more painful than being sober. So in case I'm a little less bubbly or a little out of it, I'm relying on my fabulous co-host to save me during this particular podcast. So we're talking about the budget today, right? Affects all of our lives, billions of dollars. And we, first of all, want to talk a little bit about how difficult it is to find out what is in the budget and how frustrated we are about the way people talk about the budget. So one of you guys, whoever's the most frustrated, take it away.
Let's see if we can set up for Jordan, but I'm taking this back.
Well, I guess I'll start, I guess. So I'm obviously very frustrated by the way in which we talk about it. I was in a state rep's email and buried in it, because of course it's a terrible tax bill. They buried all the way at the bottom. It was like I had to scroll, I swear to you, if I printed it'd be like 6 pages of content that was mostly meaningless. And then at the end it's like glowing. Thank you, Aaron Michaelowicz. Thank you, Ron Mariano. Thank you, like my firstborn children will be named after you in your stead, for this amazing bill that's going to fight poverty. And I was just like, what is this? Like, they will never read this email. Like, it's so far down to me. I was like, I'm pretty much sure I'm the only one who got to the bottom of this email. And it's just like so emblematic of the way in which it's run like an autocratic, like the king, like as if like the king's secret people or like the Gestapo was going to be after you if you didn't thank them enough. And you're like the bottom of your email that no one's going to read about the thing. It's mind blowing. They can't even criticize it with any sort of, or have any honesty about it. My other absolute favorite about this. So on March 7th, Representative Tricia Farley Bouvier told Northeast Public Radio that she, in digging into the Maura Healey's budget tax cuts, that she really wanted it to. Sorry, I can barely get this out. She says it plan favors the wealthy too much. Now, when the House passed basically the same tax cuts, only more expensive, spending more money on rich people, did that same state rep object to this? No. Effusive. Oh, it's the best bill that's ever happened. It's amazing. Thank you to Aaron Michaelowicz and the speaker for this bill. It's just mind-blowing, It's mind-blowing. The way, just like March 7th, wow, this is geared towards the wealthy. Get to vote on it. I mean, this is the best thing that's ever happened. Thank you for giving more tax cuts to the wealthy. It's just absolutely, it's infuriating the way they talk about it.
Jonathan, do you have any words on like how difficult it is to find out?
That for all of the obsequiousness that we hear from legislators about this, and as well as a fair number of advocates as well, it's often very difficult to find kind of concrete things explaining to you how a budget changed year to year. So often, even if you get details about a budget printed in a news article or a press release, they will talk to you about the funding level that something received. Like, we are so happy that this, like, X, Y, or Z got $10 million in the budget. And if I'm reading $10 million, is that an increase from last year? Is that a decrease from last year? Is it an increase but low inflation? So it technically isn't an actual increase. So much of the coverage leaves out the basic things that would help people understand what is actually happening year to year, knowing that with as many state departments as there are, some of them are definitely going to be gaining in their budgets more than others, or gaining in their specific programs more than others. And we're left without a clear sense of that, and with only getting to hear the glowing praise that legislators and most advocates kind of give to those who created a budget as a way of boosting their perceived ability to get something out of the budget the next. But that continues a process in which the kind of regular voters are not really included during the budget process in a meaningful way.
I want to echo that and just say the thing that's so frustrating is, like, you can say that there's great things in the budget. There are. And you can say that there are things we want to change without it being like mean, or like you'll hurt the feelings of somebody who will literally never read your email. Right?
Yeah.
Like, but it speaks to the way in which the culture is so autocratic. It is so and when I mean autocratic, I mean they are worried that if at some point somebody says that they weren't totally and absolutely in line with the leader, dear leader, right? Like, if you don't absolutely be fealty to dear leader at every single moment, that therefore they might not get to be able to legislate, to do the things that they want, to things. And that's a bonker system that I thought we got rid of when we got rid of the king. It's just ridiculous. Like, you can say, here are things we love that you did. Here's where this fell short. We look forward when the Senate has a bill to fix these things. That's how you do it in a way when you have a functioning democracy.
And I also want to mention that it isn't just this, right? The fact that this budget was mostly like hammered out in private meetings where the public is not invited. No one can know what happened there. Nobody knows who was for, who was against, what those conversations were. That is totally undemocratic. So all of this comes as a package, right? The absolute fealty to the speaker, including this, overwrought praise in public, combined with the total secrecy and the undemocratic way that decisions are made there. All of this is like very unhealthy. I would love to talk a little bit about what's in the budget, right? There's some things in the budget that we think are good. There's universal school meals. I mean, hey, nobody's going to complain about universal school meals. We all think it's good. There's actually free community college for Massachusetts residents who are over 25. And also no cost calls for prisoners. Whenever I hear something like that, there are so many things in prisons that are just heartbreaking. And so I'm like, this one tiny thing got passed, like, thank God. But there's so many things, right? I feel unable to be wildly enthusiastic about no cost calls for prisoners. It's just like utterly the least that we can do. But I would love to hear from you guys. Which are your favorite parts? Is there anything else in there that you think was good? What are the things that we like?
The one thing I would just quickly underscore with no cost calls in the House budget is that their proposal hewed much more closely to the language of the corresponding bill than what Governor Healy had proposed. That Healy had wanted to only do it for the population in state facilities as opposed to county jails, and to cap the number of minutes people could have, and the House didn't, which was an important kind of step forward, because Healy's proposal was just kind of a shameless political pandering toward the sheriffs, who have been a consistent opponent of doing this and keeping out county. They're the main constituency behind keeping out county jails from any such program, and so it was nice to see that the House didn't end up just going in line with what she had wanted.
So some other good things I think that we can say are commendable is for one, the rental assistance has gone up slightly above inflation. I think that that's fantastic. That's an important thing. We don't know the details of that. So one of the things that Governor Healy's proposal did was it cut the amount that individual households could take out of it, even as it increased the total pot. And so obviously, it's already too limited. Anybody who's dealt with RAFT knows that it runs out quickly, and then families are sort of back figuring out how they're going to not end up on the streets. And so,
and just for people to understand that RAFT allows
yeah.
people to get a little bit of funding to pay for housing expenses, basically.
Yeah, it's just straight up rental assistance. RAFT, it's like rental assistance for families in transition. It's just, and then there's another mass rental voucher program, which is another really critical program against again fighting people becoming unhoused. It's a really good program, and it's good because it's simple. It gives people money when they need it, who qualify, right? And it just says, we're going to help you with your rent so that you can stay in your home. That's a really good program. Again, it increased in the House budget above inflation at around 12%. That's really good. That's commendable, especially as the House and the Senate continue to not do anything on, housing affordability. The least they could do is continue to put Band-Aids on the puncture wound, the bleeding wound that they're allowing to just bleed out. The least they can do is put out some Band-Aids. So, as housing.
Say how you really feel, Jordan.
Yeah. So those are really good. I think the other thing, the home base program, which is a program that allows people receiving assistance to continue receiving assistance for 12 months, even as their income rises. So this is something that was put, so in 1994, when we got rid of welfare does not exist. We do not give people money for being poor the way we used to and should frankly do. The one thing they did was recommendations on how to get people out of poverty. 1994 came that report. 2023, we're finally doing it. Congratulations to us. We now have more money in place to allow people, because one of the things they find is that people do in fact get disincentivized to get off those assistance if they find jobs that make slightly more, because no one goes from directly out of, right? It's a cliff effect. You don't go, if you fall off the cliff, then you're just off. Well, then what's your incentive to make slightly more? Because people don't go from making poverty wages to then rich. They usually step up, and this recognizes that and allows people some assistance to get there. That's what we want. We know that that's an important thing. That's a really good bill. Also, the House exempted fair share from 62F. I will again remind people that 62F will never be a thing again, because we won't be flushed with federal money anytime soon. So I guess good things for paper fixes, that won't happen. Maybe they should have stepped in before that happened to, fix what Governor Baker was doing. And finally, I think the other thing that's commendable is an amendment that's been part for a long time that I think is really important. It standardizes collection on demographics and increases the types of demographics we're collecting information from. We tend to lump people from lots of different places. Central America just becomes Latin, Hispanic, right? There's not really a lot of it, let alone Puerto Rico, let alone the Dominican Republic, let alone all the different Asian countries that people come from. We usually just say Asian, and obviously people who are from India have very different needs than people who are from Vietnam and China and Japan and all the wonderful places that people come from. And so this bill recognizes that lived reality and tries to collect data so we can make better decisions. I think it's a fantastic amendment. So those are some really things I think we are good in this, as well as some of the things we've seen around the increase in earned income tax credit and so a little bit of money for childcare, although again, laughable considering we're the most expensive.
Ooh, well, that's a surprising number of good things. All right. There's some things in there that we like. Right on. That's good. Let's talk about any of the stuff that we either is missing or that we feel like is just bad policy. I know you guys got it in.
One thing I'm happy, the one thing, despite all of the praise, one thing that's important that Mass Budget pointed out in the write-up that they released on this is that I'm gonna say, and I quote, "So compared to the current FY 2023 GA and the supplemental spending approved by the legislature for the 2023 fiscal year, the House proposal represents a 3.9% reduction in spending, and that after adjusting for inflation is 7.4% smaller." and so they might do a supplemental budget later to kind of address that gap. But it's noting, despite all of this talk about how wonderful what the legislature passed, is that this is not a like, continual upward, especially given especially given high inflation, and as well as the number of federal kind of COVID era programs that are kind of that are subsiding in some ways. One other thing that I know that I've seen a lot of disappointment with that I would share is GBIO, Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, has been doing a campaign around public housing with an ultimate goal of almost doubling the amount that the state does put up for public housing, kind of in the operating cost line item. They had done because it is well below what it needs to be if we're going to actually kind of expand public housing or even just do a good job of maintaining what we have. And I know GBO had done a campaign around something that wasn't the full, like, kind of almost double increase that they want to bring it to what it needs, what like an analysis say it would need to be, but just a small increase, and that the House didn't even commit to doing that small additional increase that they were doing, that like their budget only includes an additional $50,000 for state-owned public housing, when we're about $80 million below what it should be if we're going to meet the existing need.
And am I right in I was just going to ask a question. Am I right in assuming that the United States spends way less on like public housing and social housing than the vast majority of other, sort of industrialized countries, wealthier Western countries? I think that is correct. I know that there are places, in Vienna and a number of other cities in Europe where there's tons of social housing, which is a little bit different from public housing because it's not, you're only means tested when you enter. You're not means tested. You can stay as long as you want to, right? So it really creates this rich and more diverse, certainly economically diverse place where people aren't forced out, right? So it allows people to sort of stay there and live with, multi sort of different bands of income levels.
This isn't on public housing, but from quickly looking at the National Low Income Housing Coalition's website, that the U.S. spends like significantly less on housing assistance as a percentage of GDP than other developed countries. Their statistics from 2019 had the U.S. spending 0.10% of GDP for housing assistance, compared like Great Britain at the highest at 1.41. So 1.41 in Great Britain compared to our 0.1 in terms of the percentage of GDP. Yeah. So we're clearly not doing as well as other countries. It also speaks to so much of budget discussions always leave out what is actually the assessed need for any of these line items that we're talking about. Because clearly that there is an understanding for any program of like, if you wanted to do everything that you need to do to meet all of the people who need this program, how much should it be funded? And that's so often not centered in budget discussions, and it's just these kind of isolated, decontextualized numbers get the discussion.
Absolutely. Other things that aren't in the budget, or things that we are not crazy about in this particular budget.
So I just wanted to answer your other question really quickly. Just for rental assistance around the world, I was like, let's look at rent. That's an interesting one for me, not just affordable housing. The average of OECD countries, so countries that are considered developed, is about 7%. Again, Great Britain leads that at 20%, France is 18%, Ireland's 18%, Iceland 13, 17, 7's the average. We're at zero. We're at zero as a country. So we're at the bottom of that list. Just to throw that in there as a problem.
And I like to think, you can think of the budget as your values, and really you can think of a budget as the values of who, not just what policies you value, but who, what people do you value? What people does the government serve, right? And classically, American government serves wealthier people, corporations, does not serve the people, who are unfortunately at the bottom. And so, you can just see that in the US budget. You can also see that sometimes in the Massachusetts budget, although like we said, there are a number of things where we feel like there's some movement in the right direction.
As well as even like other things, is that like we really haven't fixed the kind of historic underfunding of public higher education, that in recent years it has not been as bad, but we have not brought public higher education investments to where it should have been if it was just keeping track of where it was at the turn of the century back in 2000, no, 2001.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's what leads to like the tuition increases that you often see. I know that Healy's proposal for using fair share funding had like a tuition freeze in it, which the House didn't end up doing. And public higher education is a great for economic opportunity, both in terms of the students who are able to benefit from it, but as well as the communities where colleges and universities are.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in with some of the kind of bigger picture things that we wish that they were, doing more on.
Before you do that, I just want to quote, because this is I just want to quote Mass Budget's thing about that, which is essentially like, the House budget. Sorry, I was trying to find the quote, but essentially the House, just to put a fine point on it, your tuition. So if you go to college, right, we're public education, it's going to go up, right? It's going to go up under this House budget. Also, capital programs. So like capital projects. So things that are big projects at state colleges, those are frozen underneath the House bill. So that means that tuition's going up and spending on like basically nice things at universities is going to freeze. I found it. For example, the House removed a tuition freeze in capital projects for state colleges and universities. Minimizing tax cuts could allow us to make fewer sacrifices of this type. So the House prioritizing $1.1 billion in tax cuts geared towards rich people means that the colleges, which we already are underfunding and have continually to underfund since 2001, they're going to again increase the cost to you, a student, you, a parent, you, somebody who cares about somebody, a loved one who's going to college. That's going to increase, and there won't be, there's something. So just to like reiterate that point.
Oh yeah. And I'm just going to go super big picture and say, hey man, we could pave the roads. Hey man, we could actually like get rid of all the lead lines that are in Massachusetts that mean that kids under the age of 6 are still drinking lead water. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah.
How can we live in a country where this is happening? We could be funding universal pre-K for every kid over 4. They do it in Iowa. They do it in a few other states. Why aren't we doing it? We could, have state colleges, not just community colleges. State colleges could be free. They could be debt free. They could be free. Like the number of things, childcare for people. It's like freaking tuition. I mean, it's insane how much money. And this is why, it's a women's issue as well, because in general, it tends to be women that quit their jobs, stay home, and then their careers are set back 10 years. And their ability to maintain a salary. Like there are so many, and we're not even talking about Medicare for all, which like if we pass Medicare for all, it would take money out of what the state pays to the insurance companies, which is wildly increasing. It is a huge amount of the budget, and it comes out of the education budget. It comes out of the transportation budget. It comes out of any budget where people are employed by the state. And the state would save money. And almost every single person in Massachusetts, or certainly about 90% of wage earners, would save money. But we're not making those policy choices, even when they're fiscally responsible. So I just wanted to not forget to mention the big picture things that the state is like literally wouldn't even touch with a 10-foot pole.
No, which is such an important point, because that's not just like how much are we spending versus how much we were spending, but it's like what are we not spending on at all?
Yes.
And what are they not doing at all? That means that the budget, even if you actually do achieve progress, it's an incremental thing rather than something that's trying to actually be kind of transformative or far-reaching. Even though somehow they always end up talking about their incremental wins as being like the most transformative thing that has ever happened, it is still not nearly in line with that we were actually meeting all of the needs of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And so just to follow that back up, to reiterate the point that Jonathan made, this budget is a decrease in spending from last year. So your schools may get more money, but are they keeping up with the higher cost of everything? Is your municipality going to be able to keep up with the higher cost of everything? Is the assistance you're getting going to get able to put up? Are the road costs, which cost more to pave those roads, going to cost to keep up with inflation? And the answer is across the totality of spending, no, it's a decrease. We're going to spend less. So likely your municipality is going to have less money to do those things. It's going to have less money to pay private health insurance companies that are raising way more than 9% this year for things. It costs the cost of electricity and heating. Those went up way more than 9%. Your municipalities pay for a lot of that. Guess what? This budget's not going to keep track with that. This budget's not going to keep up with those increasing costs. So across the state, we are, I got so animated. Across the state, we are spending less than we did last year. I think it's really important to make that note.
Yeah,
that's
in
what
real
the House,
goods and services. Yes,
right. That's what the House has passed: a tax, a lower but a less money spent, and larger for millionaires. And that's what this House of Democrats overwhelmingly passed without any real debate, without any real pushback, with 3 people saying, "Wow, that tax cut, we can't afford that tax cut." 3 of them had at least the foresight, the guts, the honesty of of where we are financially to say we cannot afford $1.1 billion in tax cuts geared towards the wealthy. Because look, we don't have to wait because House 2024 budget, that is a decrease. We're spending less than the rising costs of. We're spending less money on this Commonwealth. That's bonkers.
Yeah.
That's bonkers.
You
could replace this economic policy with the House Republicans and the debt ceiling debate. You could replace our Democrats with them, and there'd be no difference in their economic and their budgeting and their overall budgeting process. It's the same outlook. They may spend it differently. It may be less terrible and less regressive, right? There's other, obviously, individually, they spend money differently on different things. Yes, I'm not saying that that's the exact same, but I'm saying overall, their vision for how we should handle our economic business, House Republicans want to cut the spending of the federal government. Your state Democrats cut the spending of the state of Massachusetts. Same thing.
And I just have to jump in and say that sometimes I think we should change the name of this podcast to That's Bonkers. Because I love it when you say that. So I'm going to move us, guys, to talking briefly about amendments. I know how much you love amendments. There were over 1,500 amendments, over 1,500, and who knows how many amendments, right? What's your feeling about amendments? We'll do a whole podcast on this. Don't worry.
Yes, it's something that's worth a whole episode, and we've done one in the past on this. Is that you end up realizing that, especially for something like the budget, amendments are very performative. What
do you mean by performative?
Thank you. Is that no state, very few, if any, state reps are actually trying to get a vote on this. They expect this not going to get in. They're doing it because either it's already been blessed, and so it's going to get in, and they actually like having it as their own amendment as opposed to in the base budget, so that they can send out a press release and take direct credit. Which is, to me, what's always pointless. If an amendment's already going to get in and already has the support, why wasn't it just in the base budget? And it's typically because somebody wants a press release. Or it has no chance, nothing that they do is going to actually change it in the matter of like a few days. And it's not going anywhere. They know it's not going anywhere, and they're trying to change it. So it becomes a lot more of like a display, like a public display of support more than a meaningful effort to change a reality. So it always feels very like we pretend to lobby, they pretend to listen about kind of advocacy around budget amendments, as well as the fact that so many of them just go through the process of consolidation, where the House will take every budget amendment that deals with issue X, put them together, take out all of their content, add in a few earmarks, and then vote unanimously on it. So that the individual ones aren't getting any real hearing, and sometimes sometimes like every earmark doesn't necessarily need its own hearing, but they will often put policy budget amendments in with everything else. So if you don't know this already, you see, oh, this was in Consolidated A and Consolidated A passed. Does that mean that this amendment passed? No, it means nothing because there's barely anything left in that. So it's kind of another way in which the process is designed to be less transparent for the average person.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk next about the people moving. This is the other thing that I think is really important for the budget, because one of the things that got discussed about the reason that we needed to cut millionaires and billionaires taxes is that the outflow, there was people leaving Massachusetts. And so I'm very thankful to Mass Budget, who did some extensive work on this question of where do people move. And I think it's important to note that people do not move based on taxes. They do not move based on taxes. That is just that's just absolutely false. There's a lot of data around this. This is absolutely not real. But if you want to know, if you're like, but Jordan, people are moving to Florida, New Hampshire. If you want to know the states where people are coming, because we're having an inflow because people move. I know that's shocking. People don't just leave Massachusetts. People are coming here. The two states where people most come to Massachusetts from, Florida and New Hampshire. Which I love that they did that research. So no tax states, I don't understand. They're fleeing no tax states to come here? What does that mean? Again, the other piece that I think is important with this is that the majority of the people who left Massachusetts are low and middle income people. So they're not leaving this state because of taxes on estates or millionaires' taxes. They're leaving this state because it's not affordable, because we're not investing, because we're putting band-aids on rental assistance for people who are absolutely at the margins and not providing any real relief for regular people, right? If you are trying to raise a family and you want to do it in Massachusetts, how you can afford it? And this budget does almost nothing about that. Basically nothing. At the very least, it doesn't even tread water because, again, as we just said, it's an overall cut in real dollars. So I think that's important work that Mass Budget did about where people are leaving. So the next time somebody says to you, but people are leaving, you can say, but where are they coming in from? They're coming in from Florida and New Hampshire, because people aren't leaving or coming based on their taxes, at least not, especially not high-end people. But if you want to keep those people, the thing to do, if you want to bring in the tech industry, you want to bring in these things, then you need to make it affordable for people to live here. You need to make it a nice place that people want to be. You want to have roads that are great. You want to have quality public transportation. You don't just want it because it's some vague good thing. You want it because young people overwhelmingly don't want to drive cars. And if you ask young people what they want and where they want to go to places that have good public transportation. So even if you're selfish, you don't care about public transportation, and you just want a vibrant economy, one of the best investments you can make is in high quality public transportation, high quality public education, and making it affordable and rent stabilization. Those are if you were to do three things to make a vibrant economy, those are the three things you would invest in.
I will say, if we pass Medicare for all here, I think people would be moving here.
Amen. Right. If you took off if you took off the worry of having to pay for health insurance, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel slightly bad in the back of my mind is like, when I talked about what we're not funding, how could I not have mentioned climate change and our desperate need to it is going to cost money to figure out how we can convert all of our entire private and public transportation fleet to not use fossil fuels and to retrofit almost every single building that exists in Massachusetts, both not just public ones and not just homeowner ones, but all the landlords. Like, somehow we have to make that happen. It is a Green New Deal that is going to require a lot of labor and it's going to create new jobs. It's going to be amazing, but we cannot do it without adding it to the budget. So I had to throw that in there. And we're wrapping up. I wanted to Any final things on the budget? I know, Jonathan, you had one thing to say about excuses not to budget as an excuse not to pass
Yes,
things.
is that the thing that's always enraging is how the legislature just uses so many months at the start and middle of the year to say that because of the budget they can't do anything else. They should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. They're a full-time legislature, and that people should never allow them to use that as a legitimate excuse not to legislate, as most other states seem to acknowledge that they can do multiple things at the same time.
And it's only because of this weird system we happen to use where like you only do the budget this time of the 2-year session, and then you only do hearings that time of the 2-year session, and then you only have amendments this time. It's like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. You know, why can't you just pass bills when those bills need to be passed?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's, yeah, I just want to say again, this just follows up with a thing we've been saying, which is that by and large, one of the weirdest things about the sort of autocracy in our state house is that they don't allow legislators to do the basics of legislating.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason you can't be doing housing hearings or affordable healthcare hearings or environmental hearings. There's no reason you couldn't be moving legislation into committees and out of committees while you're doing a budget. There's literally makes no sense, except if you understand because the House doesn't allow any of the legislators to do the basics of legislating, then therefore all that stuff grinds to a halt because the only person who decides is one person.
Yeah.
So like it just to say that like this is again like, it's so ridiculous, and it's like does not need to function this way.
I saw an amazing quote from Speaker Mariano saying like, this was the most amazing and efficient and fast budgeting process ever. You know what that says to me? The most autocratic, because you know the reason it's efficient and fast is because nobody disagreed with him on anything.
Yep.
Awesome. So we only have one. Oh my gosh. Before we go, I always forget to do this. Please donate to the show. It would be amazing. We would love you. If you have a birthday, it's even the budget, man. If you got a birthday coming up, like we'll say happy birthday to you, just send it to us. We have a little form on the website where you can like put in a note. If you want to celebrate somebody else's birthday, send us like $40, $50. You know, we'll say happy birthday. So send us little notes that we can thank you. If we can thank you on air, we'd love to do that. And please do donate to the show, spread the word about the show. And our final note is going to be about 3 Morans and 2 Black women. So Jordan or Jonathan, either one of you.
Yeah,
Jonathan,
this is
if you want to jump in on this one.
It's just
Well,
one
it's like a very
statement
bad
about
joke.
the one thing that's a statement about the need for greater representation in the Massachusetts State House, where and it's no knock on John Moran, who's a good guy, who's going to become the next state rep for the 9th Suffolk District. But with that, the number of Morans will rise. Number of men named Moran in the Massachusetts House will rise from 2 to 3, meaning that the number of men named Moran will be larger than the number of Black women in the Massachusetts House, which is just a very sad statistic for representation in Massachusetts.
It is. On that note, we hope that everyone here has really enjoyed this deep dive into the budget and of the frustrations we have with the State House. And we have enjoyed it so much. Please send us your comments. Please send us your questions, and we will see you all next week. Hey there. Thanks so much for watching us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And it would be amazing if you would also subscribe to us on your favorite podcast player. Just look for Incorruptible Massachusetts wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much.